Thank you, everybody. And I would like to thank the South Summit organization for this important event and for inviting the agency to be present here. I feel that there is a very big, important connection between data protection and all the startups and all the innovation that we are living in our country and in Europe after the GDPR. And I would like to transmit a very important message that innovation should be linked with the respect to data protection. It's a factor of quality and a factor of competence in the market if we are going to protect in every startups the right of privacy from all the clients. First of all, I would like to introduce my folks here at this table. From my left is Narceo Ballina Rodriguez. He's an assistant research professor at Indea Networks and also has an appointment as research scientist at the networking and security team at the International Computer Science Institute in Berkeley, California, and is a co-founder of AppCensus. He obtained his PhD at the University of Cambridge in 2014, and his research has been awarded with Best Paper Awards at prestigious peer review conference. I'm not going to mention all of them. And his work in the mobile security and privacy domain has directly influenced significant policy changes and security improvements in the Android platform. We have been collaborating together from the agency, and I know that he's a reference. He has presented his work in non-academic events, including privacy and regulatory forums, and international media outlets like the Washington Post, the New York Times, Financial Times, Wired, Ars Technica, and El País have covered Narceo's research findings. Jose Manuel, who is in the middle, is CEO and founder of BuyOnline. His company has expertise in applying artificial intelligence to business, helping companies deepen their customers' knowledge to improve and customize their value proposition and to optimize their operations. His training as a mathematician, his experience as a consultant at Accenture, and his 20 years working in business intelligence in different Spanish banks have allowed him to provide his company with a team with great expertise in translating real business needs into AI algorithms, which predict the behavior of people and machines. Passionate about technology and human relations, he believes that the most important factor to help companies in their digital transformation is the human contribution, not only to manufacture the technology, but above all to help interpreting and making proper and sustainable use of AI. And the last is Pei Shi Liu. I hope to pronounce correctly.
That's fine. Yeah,
Thank
perfect.
you. He considers herself a world citizen. She was born in Paris, grew up in Taiwan, studied in Belgium, and ever since has worked international sales and business development. After 18 years of experience in international sales, Pei developed human and professional skill sets that empower her to become a business consultant, facilitating business developments and partnerships building between Asia and Europe companies. Recently, attracted by the potentials of exports, the most fast-growing entertainment industry, she co-founded and serves as CEO of Cooldown Ventures Limited and acquired the UK leading sports organization Bex Gaming. Apart from supporting players and teams to grow, Cooldown Ventures is designing unique entertainment projects and providing consultancy service to brands that wish to effectively reach out to millennials and Gen Z demographics through sports. So I feel very honored to have such a high talent being with me and supporting me. And I will give a very brief speech about what's the goal and the functions of the Spanish Data Protection Authority, which are the opportunities that data protection provides for new business initiatives, and which are the guides and the tools where we would like to help all the international startups that are here present. Data protection can be approached from many perspectives. One is the legal perspective, and everybody knows the GDPR, who's become in force since almost 2 years. And there is also a regulatory and punitive perspective. I know that we are very well known for the fines, and now the GDPR can fine if a client or a public administration don't respect this fundamental right from 0 to 20 million. Is too much. and from 2 to 4% of all the global income of that business. But since I've been working in the Spanish agency for more than 4 years, and right now, I've been working and focusing very much, trying to help and to support talent and innovation in our country to balance the respect for these human rights. And one of the mantras for the GDPR is the privacy by default and privacy by design, and trying to help the respect of this data as a factor of competition in the market. I feel that we should change from this traditional approach from fines and punitions to a more modern and innovative approach. The data protection and startups should be a professional opportunity, and it's a field for the development of technological innovation that should be based in the quality of the products. At present, there is a vacuum that must be filled, and doing so requires company with the capacity to analyze and audit application from a privacy perspective, that develop new tools to do that analysis, which involves the development of technological product, but also the development of new guides and even new specific audit standards for privacy, that could develop also libraries that implement the principles of privacy by default and from design that I already said, and that produce innovative solutions to the challenges of disruptive technologies like Internet of Things, automatic decisions, artificial intelligence, machine learning, blockchains, etc. Such encryption systems, hash anonymization strategies, new control and traceability methods for personal information, for example. Okay, I would like only to focus on the most important points where the agency can help. During my mandate, the new Evaluation and Technological Studies unit has been set up, and I offer the help. We are going to launch a special microsite in our webpage, especially to help startups, innovation products, to be built from the design and from the beginning with the respect of data protection. And there is from now, there is a specific area that has been created to group together all the material relating to guides and tools, and some of them are in English. I will relate it afterwards. It's amazing, the synchronicity. This building is in the Angela Robles Street, and we have created and we have launched a new award, the Angela Robles Award, with the aim of awarding development of an original, creative, or innovative business activity, product, or service with a social impact in relation to data protection. I invite you to present our candidatures if you wish that you will have that feeling, because the update will finish in November 15, and the priority is focused on all the activities relating to the management of the risks of and solutions to disruptive technologies which cover special data categories or process considered high risk. We have developed some studies, and guides, and I will give you, sorry, because I don't want to forget any of them, just the example of the guides and tools that we have translated in English in our website is aepd.es. K-anonymity as a privacy measure, guide on personal data breach, guide on drones and data protection, access to application on the screen for Android devices, user controls for app personalization on Android, survey about pre-installed apps in Android and privacy risks, analysis of information flows in Android, tools for compliance with accountability, and survey on device fingerprinting. And our commitment with our social responsibility, corporative commitment, and with the to help private markets trying to implement good startups, trying to promote them in our country. Just to finish, I would like to focus on that is perfectly compatible to implement and startups with the respect of these fundamental rights. And I offer the help of the agency if we can make some link or some kind of cooperation to strengthen these important solutions in the market. And now, if I order my papers, yeah, I have some questions for the members of the table. The first one are for Narceo. What's needed for the creation of a sustainable environment for the development of mobile applications that respect privacy? And what kind of new private initiatives should be taken in the startup sector?
Okay, but first of all, I would like to say that it's an honor to be here, and I would like to thank Mark for the invitation. It's a very interesting question in reality because every single individual in our societies has a mobile device, right? And this is the first thing that we probably check in the morning as we wake up, and the last thing that we check before going to bed. And that has actually created a bunch of very innovative business models, right? Since 2008, when it was the date in which the iPhone was released. The problem is that all this ecosystem that has been born around the mobile devices was somehow using personal data as the unicorn blood to create all those multi-billion companies, right? And the problem is now that this is actually, we are in the middle of a change in our society in which people are becoming more aware of privacy issues, right? Probably we wouldn't have been in that position if it were not for the Snowden cases or the scandal or because of the Cambridge Analytica case. But somehow people are trying to be more aware about the fact that the mobile device is the perfect spying machine. It has sensors to interact with the environment. It has the capacity to know with whom you speak or how, even if you have if you're cheating your couple or whatever, right? It's like they have the capacity to infer all that. So first of all, the developers need to start to realize that there will be an impact, not only in terms of economic fines through because of the lack of compliance, but also that there will be a reputational issue, right? So they have to start to be more aware of how to be more protective with users' privacy. And for that, I think that this has to be a radical change since the beginning at the time of creating a company or a product, because it's no longer OK to say that, yeah, privacy and security will come after. First, I will develop my business model. So it requires somehow changing the culture. And I don't know how it's going to happen in reality. Probably training developers, training in the business schools, probably teaching that privacy is important, because in reality, privacy and innovation can go hand by hand, right? Now, there are more companies that are also providing privacy enhancing tools like Brave, to mention one, right? And they're actually being quite successful in that area. So it doesn't have to actually come at the cost of innovation.
I totally agree. And our National Survey Statistic Institute launched a survey, and they say the conclusion was that 8 out of 10 of our Spanish citizens are worried about their data protection right. And my second question for you, Narceo, is from your perspective, what exactly do entrepreneurs need to know about threats to privacy on mobile applications?
Well, first, they have to understand the value of privacy by design, right? This is key. And again, that's related with my previous answer. You have to change completely the processes within the company to achieve that. But based on my research work, I will say that the main issue, especially in the mobile domain, is the integration of third-party SDKs or software development kits. This is basically something that, as a startup, makes a lot of sense, right? Because you probably want to monetize your application through advertisements, or you want to understand how your users are behaving and interacting with the app. The problem is that this is somehow like the Hansel and Gretel tale. You should not accept cookies from a stranger, or sorry, candies from strangers. To some extent, you need to understand that you're liable for whatever those third-party components are doing in your applications, because both Android and iOS have a limitation, which is that when you give, or when you as a user grant access to a permission to a given application developer, all those third-party SDKs that are embedded in the application have the same access to the same data, right? And the user is not aware of that. And typically, the developer is not even aware of what are the practices of those SDKs once they are integrated. So that somehow requires more a transparency effort, perhaps from an independent source that will say, this is actually in compliance or not. On the other hand, self-regulation is not really working. We have done an analysis of the privacy issues on children applications in the US. This is the only strict law about privacy in the US, right? You cannot collect any personal data from kids without parental consent. And we found that around 60% of the applications on Google Play that are targeted at children are not complying with the law. And even though the developers have to acknowledge that they understand the law and that they are actually complying with the law, still, this is another evidence that without enforcement and without any kind of external monitoring, this is not going to happen because probably the developers do not have the right incentives as well to comply with regulation.
I totally agree. I feel that we have to work together. Yeah. And now I would like to introduce some questions to José Manuel Narciso. In your current activities, you need to extrapolate new information from data sets. What are the main barriers you find when bringing innovation through mass data processing?
First of all, thanks very much for your introduction, Mar. To put the situation in context, we have the startups here trying to innovate, trying to get to market with some innovative products. And then we've got the big corporations here trying to find practical knowledge or practical application to those technologies they are talking about, or hearing about, like AI or blockchain or whatever, without really knowing sometimes what they really mean for their businesses. So matching is difficult. We have very different companies, very different interests. So there are many barriers to that matching. But for example, size barriers. Sometimes big corporations are afraid to work with small companies just in case they may disappear or they might be bought by another companies, which might even be their competitors or whatever. But from a technological perspective, I think one of the main barriers the startups have got to get to the big corporations is the reluctancy on the part of the corporates to put their data on the clouds. Startups need to work on clouds, on cloud computing. It's a necessity for them. Basically, because two main reasons. One, security. The big clouds made by the big vendors like Microsoft or Amazon are much, much safer environments, computing environments and storage environments than any startup might build on their own means, right? And the second is the access to very great storage and computing capacity at a very reasonable price on those clouds, so that many startups may use very big machines that would cost them around 2 million, 3 million euros if they had to buy them. Of course, they cannot afford that. And they can use them under a pay-per-use scheme, which is quite affordable for them, and they can translate that value to their customers, to the big corporations. Right? So for those reasons, mainly, I think the startups must work on cloud computing. And the big corporations are afraid of putting their data on those clouds because the fear, of course, is around some third parties, some external agents, none without permission to access their data, to access them. Of course, they are valuing their potential reputational cost for them.
Yeah, I feel totally that you're right. Yeah, and how do you think different stakeholders can collaborate to help break through those barriers? It means what innovation opportunities, new products or services you could identify in your daily working?
Okay, that's a good question because we know there are barriers and it is difficult to deal with that barriers. From my perspective, the regulatory bodies like the AEPT should play a very important role on that matching of interests and needs. For example, from the corporate perspective, the regulatory bodies could provide training or provide information on a regular basis with one objective, which should be that the corporates lose their fear to work with third parties working on their data, to put their data on the cloud, being able to match that with the compliance with legality. Maybe from the startup perspective, I should say I was impressed by the initiative. I understood you were talking about a startup from the AEPD, startup-oriented website, right? Which is a good initiative. That kind of initiatives, I think, should have the objective of helping the startup companies to build their solutions with the highest possible level of achievement of compliance with legality. Also help them to demonstrate to the big corporations that they are, in fact, achieving that high level of compliance. And even could be thought about even a technical advisement or assessment from maybe working on different real business cases on the main two big platforms that we have got for working.
I assume the challenge, and I commit myself to offer some kind of training to startups as soon as I could, because my team is overwhelmed. And for example, we have launched a tool for SMEs that treat basic data that is called Facilita, and it gives you by free the main requirements from the GDPR. So I will try to adapt only for basic data. If there is an app with sensitive data, we should think in more complicated requirements. But I would like to adapt that Facilita tool for SMEs to our startups, and it would be one of our priorities for this time. And now I have questions for PC Liu. You have got the experience, so how can a startup contribute to the sustainability of rights and freedom that GDPR wants to achieve?
Well, I think from the personal, understanding of GDPR, I think it's at the lowest level of GDPR. The philosophy is for me, it's more a business ethic thing, right? For example, my startup, we don't do data processing. Okay, so I'm very honored to be invited here to give my opinion. So we don't do data processing, but we do, as a company or all my employees, we do our best to protect the contact information of all our partners. So I think that's the lowest level that you should go, right? But then when we come to, because technology is evolving, there's a lot of smart companies here to do a lot of innovation solutions. So I think, in my personal opinion, I think what GDPR can do, or what startups can do, is kind of copying the example of open innovations that I heard on the 1st of October, that there was a forum here. I think governmental body today hasn't been very successful to be very close with the industry. And the image sometimes, the GDPR image today might be like you're the police kind of image, And so I think a lot of startups look at GDPR more like a blocker, but not an enhancer. Yeah. But coming from a startup point of view, and also as a business consultant, I've always have a lot of business idea in my life. When you have this kind of difficult situation, I think it's where there's the most opportunity, as business builder. So I do think that there's a lot of opportunity that startups can look for needs, how to help GDPR to have a better branding, or how we can include it in the educational program, to have children understanding what is the importance of GDPR. So from very young ages, you can embed this in your philosophy and then carry this on. When you grow up, and then we are talking about the future of startup owners, maybe. So you already have this. Of course, it's a very long process, but I think I personally don't. Of course, I think there's a lot of improvement that we need to do so the startup doesn't feel that they are challenged. by GDPR, but more that they actually can find opportunity in GDPR.
Yeah, I agree, and I would like to say, I know that everybody identified the agency as a police, but I promise that I have been 4 years working in prevention and trying to launch tools to enforce and to help our SMEs and our talent. I am very proud of looking at these young people that are so innovative, so creative, and one of the things that I think that we have succeeded is that in the Spanish data protection law that became in force last December, we achieved for the first time in our democracy that it would be an obligation now for all the autonomous community to teach about the responsible use of internet and social networks. So I am very proud of it, and I feel that now our students, but it will be our future and our talent. And I feel that they will incorporate in their genes these rights. And my last question, as a startup owner, what would you need as tools that can help you stay GDPR compliant?
Well, I think the agency, well, in Spain that I know a member of the agency, so we talk regularly, and so I have a bit more understanding on what agencies are building as tools to help startup. But I think very often a governmental body creates good tools or good policies, but sometimes you're not very good in selling it. Yeah. Or communicating it. So a lot of websites or link that Louise sent me, actually I've never, if I don't actively look for them, I will not know that they exist. So I think as a startup, I mean, a lot of the audience will relate to that a life of a startup owner, basically you fight every day to get more money, right? So all your energy is focused on that. So everything which is outside that, it doesn't really feel, you don't really feel concerned. And you try, your minimum to do them. So I think GDPR or a lot of other policies are in the same thing. I believe that you need to communicate better or to brand it, because I think governmental bodies normally don't think about branding themselves because we're the government, you know us, why do we need to do the branding? But branding is a part of your, I think governmental bodies should also have a small service of, like sales and marketing communication. So you actually can go into the life of people so people can, when we need you, we can easily find you. Yeah. We don't need to spend too much time. Yeah. Or creating tools like a directory. For example, I think a lot of startups will need to know who can help me to know what GDPR really is. It's my constant concern, my company is concerned or not. And if my company is concerned, who can help me to be compliant, and how can I achieve that? Yeah. So I think there's a lot of things we can still do.
Yeah. Yeah. We have invested a lot of time trying to communicate all the tools that we have implemented, but it's right that we have too much to do. And for example, it's the first time that the Spanish Data Protection Agency is present here, and I feel that it's very important because if we are not close to talent, it would be impossible to hear and to meet a meeting point. To help us each other. So I think it would be very interesting. And I ask you for your help. What are the most important issues that you will need from the agency to launch? And we will speak afterwards so we can make some links on some kind of cooperation. And our priority is not to find you. It's to help you and contribute from the design that you're not going to have a data breach and you will lose all your clients. That's the most important thing, and to support our bright talent in our country. So thank you so much for all of your contribution to the market, to the talent, and to the audience also. Thank you very much.
Thank you.